reawakening because they were political,
Yeah.
they were artistic collaborators. My mother ran a theater and cooked the breakfast and knew where we all were all the time.
Paul Newman changed into a whole different person when he was at home. His daughter is now speaking up about the realities behind closed doors, including his son's overdose, his remorse over drinking that almost ruined his family, and his bombshell revelation on his deathbed. Your entire worldview will be shattered by this tale. Paul Newman came into this world in Cleveland Heights, Ohio on January 26, 1925. Culturally and traditionally, his family was from all over the world. Arthur Newman, his father, was Jewish and descended from immigrants from Hungary and Poland. Teresa, his mother, was Slovak. In Shaker Heights, a wealthy Cleveland suburb, his parents had a thriving sports goods shop. Despite Paul's privileged background and his family's financial stability, he encountered prejudice. The majority of Shaker Heights residents were Christians, and anti-Semitism was prevalent at that era. Although Paul excelled academically and athletically throughout high school, a fraternity rejected him due to his father's Jewish heritage. His later beliefs on justice and equality were probably shaped by this formative experience. Meanwhile, he had an imaginative and creative upbringing. The school play Robin Hood was his first acting role, and he was just 7 years old. He felt a flame ignited by that minor part. In subsequent years, he became a member of the Cleveland Playhouse's Youth Theater Company, performing in productions such as St. George and the Dragon. Although he didn't yet envision acting as a profession, he did like it. He intended to major in economics at Kenyon College after graduating from Shaker Heights High School in 1943. Then, in the year that he was to turn 18, he joined the United States Navy with the intention of becoming a pilot. However, his studies were halted by the outbreak of World War II. After physicians found out he was colorblind during training, they repurposed him as a torpedo bomber radio man and rear gunner because he couldn't fly. While in 1945, he was training for combat missions at his Hawaii post, an aircraft carrier that took part in the Battle of Okinawa. His unit was attached to the USS Bunker Hill. Nevertheless, his pilot got an ear infection right before takeoff. Because of that minor health problem, their staff had to stay put. Kamikaze pilots assaulted Bunker Hill a few days later. Numerous members of Paul's unit were among the hundreds of sailors that perished. His presence among them would have been more probable had he not had that ear infection. After serving his country, he was awarded many decorations, including the War Medal and the American Area Campaign Medal. His departure from the Navy was marked by a profound shift in his outlook. He had a new perspective on life after his near-death experience. He was determined not to squander the opportunity that had been bestowed upon him. He went back to Kenyon College after the war. Economics no longer piqued his attention. He was an active member of the Kenyon College Drama Club, appearing in productions such as The Taming of the Shrew, Charlie's Aunt, and The Front Page. Most notably, he played Charlie's aunt. The university needed some humor after a terrible fire, and he provided it by playing a male in a woman's costume. His wit and narrative prowess were on full display in a satirical student musical he wrote and directed, which lampooned college life. The theater offered him a sense of purpose despite his academic struggles. Even though he was kicked out of Ohio University, that was just the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Life followed a different path for Newman when he graduated in 1949. His father died in 1950, and he was left to run the family business, the Cleveland shop Newman Stern Sporting Goods. It was one of the city's largest stores, being opened in 1915. Having said that, Newman lacked enthusiasm for it. He ran it for 18 months while he felt shackled to a life he despised. Subsequently, he acknowledged that instead of embracing that environment, he was fleeing from it. He left Cleveland and enrolled in Yale School of Drama in 1951, a daring move. He didn't think he had what it takes to be an actor, so he initially intended to pursue directing. Then, after a year in Yale, he made yet another bold move. He relocated to New York to study acting at the famous Actors Studio under Lee Strasberg. His performances throughout his career were influenced by the method acting skills he learnt there. In 1953, he got his big break when he was cast in Picnic, a Broadway drama written by William Inge. Director Joshua Logan didn't cast him in the starring role of Hal Carter, despite his desire for the part. The supporting role of Alan Seymour was instead given to Newman. Picnic ran for 4 months and was a huge success. However, it wasn't the part he had dreamed for. Underneath his icy demeanor, he displayed an intense yet subtle anguish. His portrayal resonated with viewers, and reviewers lauded his nuanced portrayal of the character. Once again demonstrating that he was more than simply good-looking, he received his first Best Actor Oscar nomination. 6 nominations for Academy Awards attest to the film's enormous success. Despite the lack of awards, it solidified Newman's position as a leading lady in Hollywood. His stunning blue eyes became one of his most talked-about attributes as a result of the decision to film in color, which was an unexpected consequence in and of itself. Ever since then, his appearance has been just as famous as his performance. When the 1960s rolled around, Newman had already achieved superstar status. He played the role of ambitious but small-time pool hustler Eddie Felson in 1961's The Hustler. The picture was edgy, dramatic, and loaded with ethical quandaries. One of the most iconic anti-heroes in film history was born from Newman's combination of haughtiness and vulnerability. 9 people were nominated for Oscars for the picture, and Newman was one of them. What followed was HUD in 1963. Playing the role of a self-centered rancher at conflict with his father, Newman portrayed Hud Bannon in this Western drama. Hud represented a new type of Hollywood hero since he was irresponsible and had moral flaws, in contrast to the typical Western hero. 3 Oscars went to the picture, and Newman was nominated for Best Actor again. His 1967 performance in Cool Hand. Luke was equally memorable. In the role, he portrayed Luke Jackson, a prisoner who defied the system and refused to be broken. He became a symbol of resistance via his disobedience, and the film became a cultural milestone because to his portrayal, what we've got here is failure to communicate. The movie's iconic statement was actually spoken by Strother Martin's character, but it was always associated with Newman. He was nominated for another Oscar, thus cementing his place in history. Even with everything going on, his blue eyes remained a topic of conversation. Even though Newman never let his appearance define him, they were just as famous as his films. It was at that point in his career that he made the joke that his gravestone should say, "Here lies Paul Newman, who died a failure because his eyes turned brown." However, his accomplishments had previously before that. During their time as understudies in the 1953 Broadway production of Picnic, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward crossed paths. He had 3 children with his wife Jackie Witt at the time. Gore Vidal and Marlon Brando were among the famous people that Woodward dated. Newman subsequently acknowledged that he had an instant attraction to her, albeit their relationship was initially platonic. He was more traditional, but she was progressive and self-reliant. She captivated him even more due to the difference. In 1957, when they got back together to star in The Long Hot Summer, their romance took a new turn. By that point, Newman's marriage had begun to crumble. As their relationship deepened, he and Woodward could no longer deny the obvious. After Newman's divorce was finalized in 1958, he wed Woodward in a ceremony held in Las Vegas. Before settling down to start a life together, they went on a honeymoon in England. Even though he was looking forward to his new marriage, Newman was remorseful about his divorce and thought he hadn't done a good job of explaining it to his kids. And yet, his affection for Woodward knew no bounds. He once said, "She gave birth to a sexual creature within me." The intensity of that statement impacted their marriage for the subsequent half-century. It was quite an accomplishment, particularly in Hollywood, to remain together for half a century. Despite the intensity of their love, they had a rocky marriage. "I have a steak at home. Why should I go out for a hamburger?" was a famous remark that Newman made on his devotion to Woodward. It was supposed to convey his allegiance, but also hinted at the temptations and difficulties they had. Among these obstacles was his struggle with drinking. The terrible death of his son Scott in 1978 was another. The family was devastated by Scott's death, which was caused by a heroin overdose. Melissa, their daughter, reflected on the days when her parents battled to remain united. Newman and Woodward relocated to Connecticut in order to evade the demands of Hollywood. For their 3 girls, they wished for a more peaceful existence. Many times, Newman lauded Woodward, saying that she was the one who kept him grounded. Even though they pursued separate jobs, they were there for each other no matter what. Their ability to maintain a steady equilibrium was a key component of their bond. They collaborated on 16 films beginning with 1958's The Long Hot Summer, demonstrating how frequently their professional lives crossed paths. In the films Dangers of Media and The Power of False Information, Newman brought a subtle passion to the character of Gallagher, a man fighting to defend his name. An Oscar nomination for Best Actor was bestowed to him for his performance. Up next was 1982's The Verdict. Frank Galvin, portrayed by Newman, is a broken-hearted lawyer who is yearning for a second chance. After a long hiatus, Galvin gets his chance to establish himself in a medical negligence case. Every minute of his suffering was brought to life by Newman. He portrayed Galvin's hopelessness, resolve, and gradual restoration of self-respect. Newman was nominated for another Oscar for the picture, which received 5 nominations overall. Even though he lost, it was one of his most impressive performances. Newman has been on the Oscar shortlist for a long time without ever taking home the trophy. 7 times he had been nominated, but he had never won. He was presented with an honorary Oscar in 1986 for his career achievements by the Academy, as if they were presuming he would never actually win. But he did it the next year, in 1986's The Color of Money, when he played Fast Eddie Felson again, a part he had played in 1961's The Hustler, 1961. After playing Eddie for the first time 25 years ago, Newman made sure the character had evolved. He had matured and gained wisdom, but he was still yearning for a final opportunity at glory. Tom Cruise's character, a teenage pool player, was taken under his wing by him. But this wasn't only a tale about mentoring. It also dealt with issues of pride, ambition, and the meaning of aging in a constantly changing environment. In 1987, Newman was named the Best Actor at the Academy Awards. Not only for this part, but for all he had contributed to cinema, it was a much-deserved triumph. Newman maintained his finesse even as he aged. He played the small-town handyman Sully Sullivan in the 1994 film Nobody's Fool, who was grumpy, yet endearing. Despite Sully's remorse, Newman brought a lot of humanity to the character, making him one of his most likable works. Even at the age of 69, he was producing top-notch work. His performance landed him another nomination for an Oscar. As of 2002, his last film role was in Road to Pishin. Here he portrayed Irish mafia leader John Rooney, torn between duty to his family and the gang. Tom Hanks' portrayal of his surrogate son served as the film's emotional center. As opposed to the stereotypical villain, Rooney embodied the conflict between love and duty. Everything he spoke had weight because of the calm power with which Newman portrayed him. He received his final Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination at the age of 77. It was a respectable way to end a career spanning almost half a century. Paul Newman had a far from flawless existence despite being one of Hollywood's biggest performers. He overcame self-doubt, fatherhood struggles, and an alcohol addiction to achieve his achievement. The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man, his book, exposed a lesser-known aspect of his personality. His long-hidden secrets surprised even his closest friends and family. Newman never thought he had genuine skill, even if he was a legend. Because of his self-perceived attractiveness, he thought he had been offered chances he hadn't worked for. He said he was always worried that people would see through his facade and realize he wasn't as talented as they believed. He continued to feel out of place despite his roles in films like The Hustler, 1961, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969. These fears had taken root in him throughout his formative years. Both of his parents were alcoholics. His father caused him unending pain, and his mother regarded him more like a prize than a son. Joanne Woodward, his second wife, gave him the self-assurance he needed. Something in him stood out to her, and he failed to notice it in himself. Even after she urged him to accept himself as a sex symbol, he still had reservations. Whether people respected him for his abilities or his looks was something he pondered on a frequent basis. In his autobiography, he expressed his desire to dismantle the idealized portrayal that others had constructed of him. He yearned for his true identity to be revealed to the world. His hardships extended beyond his own life. He felt like a failing parent. He confessed to being absent, inconsistent, and irritated on a regular basis, despite the fact that he had 6 children. Scott, his son, died of a heroin overdose in 1978 at the young age of 28, and the weight of this failure impacted him the most. The burden of remorse for Scott's hardships was heavy on Newman. Scott may have felt pressed to meet an unattainable ideal, and he pondered if his father's success had made life more difficult for him. Still, the race was terrible. The track became a treacherous battleground due to the torrential downpour. Even though many other teams were struggling, Newman's squad managed to stay up. They finished 299 laps, good for first place in their class, and second overall. For someone who didn't pick up racing until much later in life, it was an astounding feat. In the realm of motorsport, his performance was remarkable. At last, he had done it on the world's largest stage. Newman had a knack for assembling championship-caliber teams in addition to being a superb driver. He co-founded Newman Hose Racing with Carl Hose in 1983. It rose to prominence as one of the all-time great IndyCar teams in a flash. Mario Andretti's 1984 kart championship victory in their debut season cemented the team's status as a formidable rival. Once again, they created history in 1993 when they signed Nigel Mansell, the defending Formula One champion. That same year, Mansell accomplished something no driver had ever done before: win the IndyCar championship in his debut season. Newman Hose Racing won 8 titles and 108 races throughout nearly 30 years. Despite the success of his racing career, Newman never stopped acting. His last big-screen performance was as Doc Hudson in Pixar's 2006 blockbuster Cars. A great race vehicle who had retired from the sport was the ideal choice for the role. The character mirrored Newman's past in racing, and the 1951 Hudson Hornet that served as inspiration was renowned for its domination in early NASCAR. Not only did he like the racing aspect of the project, but he also found great joy in contributing to Pixar's storyline. Earning $462 million globally, the picture became one of the year's biggest successes. In 2007, Newman announced his retirement from acting. However, in 2017, he made a cameo appearance in Cars 3 using recordings from his archive. His health had begun to decline by that point. You start to lose your memory. You start to lose your confidence. You start to lose your invention. He spoke candidly when asked about the effects of aging, yet he maintained his enthusiasm throughout. Paul Newman was an extraordinary human being who transcended fame and fortune by bearing the weight of his victories and tragedies and rising beyond them. He was 83 years old when he died on September 26, 2008. His wife, Joanne Woodward, was by his side as he breathed his last at Westport, Connecticut home when he succumbed to lung cancer. His real impact extended well beyond the silver screen, yet his name will always be associated with timeless classics like Cool Hand Luke and The Hustler. He prioritized his family and his mission before stardom, unlike many performers. He had a unique Hollywood love story with Joanne Woodward, a marriage that lasted 50 years. Nell, Melissa, and Claire Newman were their 3 daughters, and he had 3 more from a previous marriage to Jacqueline Witt. They reared all 3 together. There was suffering in his life. A heroin overdose claimed the life of his son Scott in 1978. He was devastated by the loss. Thinking about what he could have done differently, He felt responsible for the situation. But rather than letting himself be consumed by despair, he channeled his anguish into acts of service. To aid others in their battle against substance misuse, he established the Scott Newman Center. Though he was reserved about discussing his suffering, his deeds revealed his profound concern. Newman had left the acting profession by 2007. He refused to accept help even though his condition was deteriorating. He played down the speculation about his health by insisting he was only getting medical attention for hair loss and athlete's foot. His will kept going strong as his body failed. Some of his true identity has been revealed by his daughters. In his biography, his daughter Melissa discussed his battles with low self-esteem. Unspoken methods of his upbringing impacted him. Both of his parents were very possessive and emotionally aloof, which made him feel uneasy. Despite the lasting impact of these early traumas, Newman discovered a means to progress. According to his other daughter, Clea, Dad found fulfillment in being of service to others. She has now taken a position with the Serious Fun Children's Network, an international organization that runs summer camps for sick kids. Whenever she goes to see her dad, she can't help but sense his presence since she knows his job is making a difference. The food brand, Newman's Own, which he co-founded in 1982 with novelist A.J. Hotchner. It all began with a homemade salad dressing that Newman created and presented to his buddies as a modest Christmas present. Because of the positive feedback, he chose to sell it. As the saying goes, the rest is history once he and Hotchner put up $20,000.